Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out Ondo's price chart in a minute. But before we get into all that good stuff and specifically what is happening in the short term, we are at first going to talk about this very important tweet from Ondo Finance's account. And I would actually highly suggest to, if you have time, watch this podcast because there are a lot of very much useful informations in there. But if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. We are going to talk about it a little bit. So here's the situation. In case that you don't know, Ondo is going all in on tokenization of real world assets, or it's called RWA. That means they are taking stuff like, for example, US treasuries, ETFs, and other traditional finance instruments and putting them on the blockchain. And this sounds simple, I know, but it's actually quite a big deal. Why is that? Because access to US capital market is actually a pain for most people outside of United States. You got regulatory walls, you got geographic limits, and a whole bunch of middlemen. And even if you want exposure to something like US Treasury bond, good luck getting it directly unless you are plugged into the right financial system. Now, tokenizing assets, well, okay, actually completely flips that. Once these assets are on chain, they are not going to stuck behind banking hours or jurisdictional red tape. They become globally accessible, transferable 24/7, and this is important, pay attention, they become programmable. That means you are able to build logic into your assets. For example, you are able to active auto payouts, maybe a smart governance, maybe even collateralization in DeFi, and much more. Now, let's break these three down a little bit. Number one, we're going to talk about programmable assets. And in case that you don't know what is going on in here, let me give you an example. Imagine a bond that automatically pays interest into your wallet, no banking involved. This is fantastic. And it's not actually sci-fi. No, this is literally to the T. I promise you what tokenization enables. Number two, 24/7 liquidity. You see, after trading hours, traditional markets are closed, but blockchain doesn't simply close. You can trade, transfer, or use these assets anytime you want, anywhere you want, and that is a massive shift in how capital flows. And number three, we have to talk about DeFi integration, because once these assets are on chain, they are not just going to be passive investments. No, you can stake them, you can borrow against them, maybe even use them in yield strategies, and they become basically part of the composable DeFi ecosystem. And this, in my view, is where Ondo Finance comes in clutch. You see, they are not just trying to slap on a token on a bond and call it beautiful, great innovation. No, they are building literal infrastructure, like for example, Ondo Global Markets, that actually connects traditional finance to blockchain rails. This is not just about access, it's also about utility. And having said all that, let's zoom out for a second and compare how things work in TradFi versus tokenized finance. Number one, you see, in traditional finance, access is gated. You need KYC, brokers, and often US residency. In tokenized finance, on the other hand, well, okay, access can be global and permissionless, or at least way more open. Number two, in terms of trading hours, well, TradFi gives you weekdays 9 to 5, but tokenized assets trade 24/7, no simple downtime. Number three, settlement speed. Well, okay, TradFi actually takes days, but blockchain settles almost instantly. Number four, when it comes to transparency, TradFi is kind of sort of like a black box. However, tokenized assets live on chain, fully auditable. And finally, when it comes to DeFi, TradFi doesn't even dare touching it. However, tokenized assets plug right into the DeFi ecosystem. So when Ondo says that they are unlocking US capital markets for the world, it's not just a tagline. No, it's actually a thesis, and they are betting that tokenization will do for securities what a stablecoin did for dollars. And that means what? Essentially, it will make them borderless, frictionless, and also programmable. And honestly, I think that's actually a bit worth watching, because if they pull this up and that's kind of a big if. We are not going to just talk about having some better access. No, we are going to talk about a fundamental shift in how global capital moves. So overall, yes, considering all this, it is very much, in my opinion at least, hard to not be bullish in Ondo. They have a clear focus on RWA. They are building real infrastructure and they are solving a problem that actually matters. Now, having said all that and why we are actually very much bullish in Ondo in the mid to long term, let's take a look at the chart and see if the price action is kind of telling a different story in the short term, because I think it does actually tell a bit of a different story, unfortunately. Okay, here we are. And if you remember, the last time that we talked about Ondo, we were, I believe, right in here. And the idea was that the fact that we are having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off of the lowest low followed by a correction structure is a fantastic sign. And also the fact that in here we are having a rather strong move up is yet another good sign, suggesting maybe the final low is already in, but it's not actually going to be enough for us. We said specifically what we want to see is a consolidation pattern here, followed by at least another move on the upside. Why? Because in terms of Elliott Waves, if you want to be optimistic on any chart, doesn't really matter from what market it actually is. You have to be able to find off of the lowest low a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave. This specific example is called an impulsive movement. Rules for it, we should not have overlapping of the waves between wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave, wave 3 is just not allowed to be the smallest wave. And in terms of the sub waves, you know the story in case that you are a regular viewer of the channel. 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. And for wave 2 and 4, we can have different counts. Let's say, sure, ABC into 4 and like a WXY into wave 2. Now let's go on the live chart. Okay, what is going on? And see what is happening. So clearly, by the looks of it, we did get what we talked about in the previous update, meaning a correction structure down, very slow and choppy move, followed by yet another strong move on the upside. So it's going to make perfect sense if I say, look, this is the end of our wave 3 correction for 4 and another move up into wave 5, which is basically a very important bullish confirmation indicating we have hit our final low in Ondo. You see, we can absolutely say that. I think we should actually consider this possibility right now, at least as our alternate case. Why? Because when you zoom in a bit more, okay, question, how exactly are you able to find a 5 wave in this phase up starting from this point to about this high into our wave 5 in order for you to be able to say, you know what, we have completed the sub waves for on a higher degree, a beautiful impulsive structure on the upside. From my POV at least, this looks a hell of a lot like an ABC zigzag. So I'm going to say this, there is a chance that in Ondo, this is an ABC like we said earlier, but this is going to be yet another ABC, and well, overall, maybe we are having like a WXY in form of a double zigzag, indicating what? You probably know it. Our move down is not over, and maybe soon we're going to get some more downward price action in order to take the lows down here once more about 84.5 cents. Is that going to be necessarily a bearish sign? Honestly, I don't really think so. I think based on what we are having in here in Ondo, the general trend, even if we get a move down and take the lows, is still going to remain absolutely bullish, especially because in this phase up in Ondo, we actually took this important high, which in my books is yet another fantastic sign, suggesting overall there's a very good chance we are dealing in this phase with a correction structure. Now, what if actually this isn't going to be in play and we do have indeed a 5 wave up? In that scenario, I have to consider the end of our impulse right around this point and not the highest high. And I have to say, maybe we are having, I don't know, let's say sure, something like an ABC in form of an expanded flat to about here, followed by that, maybe this is like an ABC or maybe a WXY, and this can be yet another zigzag on the downside and on a higher degree. Essentially, you are having what? A WXY in form of a flat and a zigzag. And I know if you are familiar with Elliott Waves a bit, you are going to now scream at me, look, we are not allowed to have an expanded flat into a wave W in case of having a flat and a zigzag, but I am actually comfortable messing with the rules a bit. So, you know, don't take that personally. It's just me. Now, if this scenario is happening, then okay, I need to see in Ondo soon a very strong move on the upside, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, without a lot of overlapping of the waves. If I see something like this, you know what, fair enough. At that point, I'm going to consider the bullish count, meaning having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in here as my primary case. And okay, I'm going to argue we are having at that point an insanely bullish setup. Why? Because this is going to be into a 1 correction for wave 2. And what's next if this count is in play? You know the answer. Big move up into wave 3 and 4 and 5. And since in terms of Elliott's waves, wave 3 is quite a strong and sharp move on the upside, makes sense to argue in Ondo, in case that this scenario is happening, we are going to witness some very much exciting price action. So overall, in Ondo, one way or the other, I am actually very much optimistic, but in the short term, I do think right now we need to be a bit patient and careful and wait for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very strong move up in order to maybe even take this high right in here. And if we do so, at that point, I am going to actually be a bit more optimistic than I already am in Ondo. So I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Ondo Finance's chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything but. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.